Good morning. I'd like to call the special village board meeting for the Village of Cary for our budget workshop for Saturday, March 14th, 2020 to order with roll call, please.
McAlpine?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
And Betts?
Here.
And Koenig is here. Would you, I'd entertain a motion to allow trustees Jeff Kraus, Jennifer Weinhammer, and Kim Cavelli to phone into the meeting today.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are no nays. Welcome, guys. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now moving to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. We have nobody here, so we'll go ahead and close open forum at 9:01. Eric, oh, I'm sorry, we'll go to the consent agenda.
Yes.
I will entertain a motion to approve the warrant dated March 14th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Betts?
Yes.
Collier?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Kraus?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Weinhammer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update for the Village Board. We are proud to announce a few recognitions for the Village of Cary. Most recently, yesterday, the American Public Works Association Chicago Metro Chapter awarded Project of the Year awards to both our metro station and our wastewater treatment plant biological phosphorus removal project. Those two projects had previously received those recognitions from the Fox Valley branch. So this is the next higher tier award from the region itself. So we're very honored and fortunate to be recognized for those two awards. And we want to thank again all the staff that participated in the design and implementation and continued operation of those projects.
And,
Thank you, Eric.
And then,
and is there a next step of national?
yes, exactly. Now the Chicago Metro Chapter has nominated both of our projects for the APWA national level of awards as well. So we'll wait and see the results of that. But again, it's just an honor to be recognized and just another sign of all the big things happening in our little town. So we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's now, I guess, every budget meeting, we need to start off with award
Awards.
recognition. So we're 2 for 2
awesome.
this year now, so good work.
And then two more other recognitions, ongoing as well, kind of the efforts of the things that the village does in a couple different areas. First one, the Tree City USA recognition. The village has been honored again with meeting the requirements to demonstrate our efforts and sustainability in the area of forestry. So that's now 12 years running that the city is designated a Tree City, sorry, the village is designated a Tree City USA community. And then the Illinois Department of Health has also recognized the village once again for perfect compliance in 2019 for our fluoridation program. So that's just part of the process in the water system to be able to manage and balance the addition of fluoride for all the health and dental benefits in that area. So the state does recognize communities that meet that. And that's one, actually don't have the number of years consecutive we've gotten that, but it's been, I would say probably more than a lot. Well before my tenure here. So,
Excellent.
thank you very much.
We will have press releases too, make sure the public's aware of these accomplishments as well. So congratulations to our Public Works Department.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Eric. Turn it over to Jake.
Absolutely. Mayor, Village Board, thank you. We've, as I've talked to many of you already, we've, just in the interest of time and the circumstances here, we've reduced the amount of slides that we have and reduced the talking points here. But this is our second budget workshop. The majority of our time today, we'll review the entire budget, but we will focus mainly on the general fund. Budget schedule, just quickly, the board is aware we had a budget meeting on January 18th where we reviewed the CIP. We are today reviewing the general fund, as I said. Our final budget consideration, we are still planning for that to be considered by the village board for approval on April 7th. The summary of all funds, a lot of information on this slide. I guess the take home here, if I give you any homework, it is just to review this slide. This is the most important slide in the whole presentation. This provides an overview of all 11 funds within the Village of Cary, all 11 buckets of dollars, as I call them. Just quickly to step you through it, on that far left-hand column, it shows our projected balances for finishing this current fiscal year. Just below that, it includes the revenues and expenditures for next fiscal year, including the transfers in and out, and then finally our expected or anticipated fund balance for next fiscal year. Across the top, that top row, it shows all all those different buckets of dollars. Our general fund, our operating fund on the left side, and moving from left to right, the MFT, our motor fuel tax fund, which we use to pay for our road program, the bond fund that we will use for issuing debt for the new building project, our capital projects fund, which is for special projects within the village, vehicle and equipment, exactly as it sounds, our TIFs, land conservancy, water and sanitation, parking, and building. The majority of those funds, other than the general fund, we spent time at our CIP meeting in January talking about those funds. So this is one I'd encourage everyone to study if there's one slide to go back and review. So our preliminary results for this current fiscal year that we're in right now, we're trending good. We're planning to finish the year to the good, about $200,000. Again, this is projected. We still have several months within the fiscal year that we have to get through. And so kudos to our department leaders here in controlling expenditures throughout the fiscal year. Unassigned fund balances right now, it's at 49%, which is good. We have a fund balance policy that recommends maintaining a minimum of 49%. So the board should be happy with that number.
45%.
I'm sorry, 45%, thank you. Bond rating, we're at a AA2. That is good. We should be proud of that for our community. That is a good rating to have. It would be challenging for us to get in the AA1 category, the AAA bond rating, just due to population, income levels, the amount of debt that we have issued, and so we are happy with that AA2 designation. Outstanding debt. So Mike's going to just give a quick highlight on our outstanding debt that we have in the Water and Sanitation Fund, and he'll also touch on our planned debt issue that we have for the new building. So before you is an updated schedule from our financial advisor, Spear, of the debt schedule, so you can see where the village board actions will be. For the folks that are on the phone, I'll just email this out to the entire board so you can get a flavor of the schedule for the debt issuance process. So Mike, if you could just give an overview of our outstanding debt and our debt to be issued.
First and foremost, the village currently has very little debt. The only debt we have on our books are the 2 IEPA loans that are out there. I wanted to let the board know again that we were very fortunate with the latest phosphorus project that the debt we issued for that, I think we're paying an interest rate of 1.5% for 20 years. With everything that's going on in the economy, for us and looking at a new building, it's probably couldn't be a better time to attempt to issue debt. We will try to get to market as soon as we can. I think Jake has provided you with a schedule that we have from our financial advisor in terms of a timetable for going through that process. In order to get those bonds sold, we will have to go through a rating process to verify or confirm our rating, but as quickly as we can, we'll move through that process and hopefully get this done at a very low cost for a project of that size.
Excellent.
Any questions about debt or issuing of debt? No. Okay, very good. So as we put together our budget, we faced a few challenges. One that continues to be a consistent every year is just the state of Illinois and the decisions that the state of Illinois is making. The governor's budget proposal continues a reduction of LGDF, or the income tax that is provided to municipalities, of 5%. The governor is, I guess, adding an additional 5% to make that 10% total if the graduated income tax proposal is not approved. So a 10% reduction of our income tax that we receive from the state is significant. You can see in that lower table fiscal year 2021, it's $175,000. And when you have an $8.5 million budget, that's significant. I think you can all do the math and realize that that is several employees. So we have planned for this additional 5% reduction to be taken from us. Unfortunately, the state continues to be a boat anchor for what we're trying to do here. Secondly is revenues have consistently remained relatively flat while we see increases in expenses. So our big three, which we like to talk about, the income tax, sales tax, property tax, have remained relatively flat. Personnel benefits, those go up. Obviously, we have contractual arrangements with many of our staff, and the increases, they occur on an annual basis. You see our personnel and benefit costs are approximately 75% of the general fund. And then finally, the third challenge is just the underfunded CIP. We talked about this at our January 18th CIP meeting. If anyone wants to go back or did not see that meeting, they can go back and view that presentation to gain an understanding. Again, there's a lot of information on this slide, but I think that meeting provides a good overview of all of these different funds. The primary concern and item that we need to work together on is that capital projects fund. So it's that, you can see that row of capital projects. There is no funding source that we have right now for capital projects. We're going to have to work collectively, staff and the village board, to ensure that there are funding sources for that in the future. So good news, next year's budget is balanced for the general fund. The general fund budget is balanced at $8.5 million. You can see how revenues have trended over the last several years. There's a 2% increase from last year's, and these are projected dollars. So that is the good news. Revenue composition, as I mentioned, the big three, sales tax, income tax, and property tax, that's where we see most of the revenues in the village of Cary. Those trends, they've remained flat. The top line of property tax, that is flat as you can get. Income tax is vacillated. You can see with the estimated fiscal year 2021, we have the reduction just based on the budget proposal by the governor. Sales tax, if there's a silver lining in all this, the sales tax has a slight upward trend. We do hope that continues. It's just, you know, given the COVID-19 and state of the economy right now, there is some uncertainty of where that number may go. Expenditures. So again, since the balanced budget, the expenditures within, we're still in the general fund, $8.5 million. This represents a 4.4% increase, again, from the projected dollars from this current fiscal year. The composition, the majority of the costs are out of the police department. That's not a surprise. It's not unique.
Talk about voting.
Not unique to the village of Cary. This is consistent with other municipalities. If we had fire under our umbrella, I mean, you'd see police and fire would gobble up probably almost the entire budget. And it's not picking on those services, but they're personnel-driven services. We are in the service industry. We need those individuals to provide services to our residents. And obviously, Public Works, same thing. That's where the rest of our staff, I guess, are predominantly positioned. As I mentioned previously, 75% of our general fund budget is designated for personnel. Again, we provide services, and we need to have people to provide our services to our residents and business community. The trends, though the village hasn't sat on our hands, here the village has made aggressive moves within our staffing, tried to right-size the organization, look at other creative ways, challenging the status quo of how we deliver services to our residents and to our businesses. And you can see over the last 10 to 12 years, there's been some adjustments that have been made. And I think we're at the point here where the organization's been right-sized. We're at 56, 54, 55, 56 employees over the last 4 years. I don't see this changing at all anytime soon. This is kind of the new normal as far as personnel numbers go for the village of Cary. Village Hall, so getting into, still within the general fund budget, so getting into specific departments. Village Hall, I've wrapped in admin, legal, central services, boards and commissions, community development, and finance. Out of all that, there's 6 full-time staff, there's 1 part-time staff and contractual. We're efficient operation here. Contractual services, I think the board is aware of most of these that we have. And you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, the Village Hall budget, just a slight uptick over the last several years. The police, police, patrol investigations, records, and support services. There are 26 sworn staff. We have 4 civilians where it's a blended, so the chief has started to use some part-time helpers where we can. So 2 full-time and 2 part-time civilian. Contractual arrangements, CCOM, obviously a great arrangement for the Village of Cary, Crossing Yards, social services. The police budget, it's not a surprise that it's gone up rather consistently over the last several years. This is predominantly just driven by our contractual arrangements with our employees, but then also the police pension fund. Those are the big drivers of these increases. The chief has done a good job with his team of trying to control expenditures. And just highlighting things in the police department to give you a taste, since this is the majority of the cost, the sworn officer wages, and there have been increases. This year, though, we're seeing it level off, it's flat, and we've had some retirements. We've had some retirements in our command staff. We had a deputy chief, we've had a couple sergeants retired, and that's why you see with them retire, we've refilled those positions, though, at a lower cost. And so that has kept our wages similar as last year. Police pension fund contribution, this continues to increase, and I would expect this to increase next year as well. The board has made good decisions as far as reducing the last couple of years, as far as reducing the assumed rate of return for our pension fund. We're at 7% right now. I think the number that Mike and I have discussed about trying to get to is that 6 3/4 number. We'll continue to explore that with our actuary. And then this fall, we'll talk about it again with the village board. But obviously, when you reduce that assumed rate of return, it's going to drive that pension payment up. But these are prudent financial decisions that the board is making. Public Works. So Public Works includes streets, forestry, fleet, facilities, engineering, and obviously now our new Rotary Park maintenance that we're providing. There's 12 employees within Public Works. We are adding within this budget a part-time position, not only to help in Public Works, but occasionally to backfill within Village Hall when we need that. 2 seasonal hourly employees, and then they have contractual arrangements and contractors as well. The budget within the Public Works Department, you see it's kind of vacillated throughout the years. Most recently in this next year's budget, there's a significant decrease, and that is because we have moved salt. So our salt purchase is now moved out of the general fund and within the motor fuel tax fund, and that is driving that decrease within the Public Works budget. Municipal partnering, and Eric will give a quick commercial on this. We have been a leader in this. Eric has been a leader in McHenry County in helping to drive this program. It helps to save us costs, enhance our intergovernmental cooperation with other municipalities. So Eric, if you could just give a quick blurb about this.
Yeah, precisely. We do continue to encourage that participation of MPI throughout our region. I currently serve as the chairman of the McHenry County Municipal Partnering Initiative. And as part of that role, I do a lot of outreach and encouraging additional agencies and other non-traditional partners to grow the sharing. So we've been very good at getting more school districts, park districts, and other agencies involved. And as you can see in that list, that's just a partial list of all the different options that are out there. And kind of demonstrating what our staff does of that list, I would say we are probably the lead agency on about 1/3 of them. So we're trying to get that spread out more and more as time goes on. But again, we appreciate the administrative support that we have with not just myself, but the rest of our team to help lead that partnering initiative.
Awesome.
And that's part of the push-pull too, is Eric is taking a leadership role in this, and he's handling a lot of these bids, but we need others to step up. It does take time to manage and facilitate this program. And then continuing just with the public, excuse me, public works highlights, there is that road salt adjustment that we made that I talked about and moving that to the motor fuel tax fund. And that, Eric, if you just highlight some of these non-MPI contractual services that we have.
And most of these are, all these are recurring services that we utilize. It does help balance the right size approach to our staffing levels that Jake mentioned. Snow removal, that is an in-house kind of an emergency and recurring routine service, but we utilize contractors as backups in the event of sick staff or equipment issues. But then on a regular basis, they support our commuter lots and our municipal parking lot plowing. Like I mentioned, a lot of these bids are ones that routinely are brought before the village board for approval. Tree planting, elevator maintenance, alarm system maintenance, a lot of those behind the scenes items that just keep those functions and those facilities operational and maintained given their specialty nature. The one that we haven't seen too much of lately would be the landscape maintenance in terms of prairie burns. Those are things that are necessary, not just in our newly acquired Rotary Park, but other rights of way that's our responsibility for, whether it's a naturalized detention basin or some of the areas along the railroad tracks that we have an agreement with Union Pacific on.
Thank you. General fund budget history, I just show this for context for folks that haven't been a part of the last several years of putting the budget together. Within the general fund, we've had to do cuts the last 3 years. I mean, significant cuts in 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. And it's gotten to the point now, we put together the budget and we're at the bone. There's not anything left to cut. And that's why we're seeing this road salt be moved to the MFT program. That's the reason why the budget's balanced, is that move. And next year, unless something changes, it's going to be a hard time again next year. We're running out of things to move, or we're out of things to cut. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and we're going to have to work together. And I just added a few factors that stress the general fund. I've talked about these, pension fund contributions, salary and benefits. Revenues have generally been flat, and unfortunate state decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, yeah, you look at that number, the $170,000, and we moved to the MFT. I mean, that with the cut with the LGDF fund being reduced by $175,000, that's, we'll continue to work as a municipality with our other municipal partners with the state to try to ensure that money will come back to us. That's something that's high on our list to get taken care of.
Yeah,
because it's making huge impacts to all of our surrounding communities. It's something that we need to take very seriously.
that's a great point, Mayor, because it's almost, 170, 175.
Yeah.
Right.
It matches up, so. Now we're leaving the general fund bucket of dollars, and we're going into a separate bucket of dollars for water and sanitation. So water and sanitation is an enterprise fund. So next year, revenues and expenditures, you can see that they're a little crooked. I just want to assure people that this is per the plan. We do a 5-year water rate study. This is all these projects are part of that water rate study. We're spending down some of the balances within the water and sewer fund. Revenues of about 4 million, expenditures of about 9.5 million. We have significant investment in our capital that is occurring, which is very important, not only in water and sanitation, but also within other areas, downtown, parking fund. This within the water and sanitation, our personnel, there's 9 full-time employees, seasonal, and obviously we have contractors. The proposed budget, and you'll see the makeup of those expenditures. The water fund, about $7.5 million. A lot of this relates, which Eric will go over a couple projects here, but we have a significant well 10 rehab project that's going to happen, and then also water main expenditures that will happen as well. That's why you see that significant spike within the water and sanitation fund. But again, these are planned, and these projects are within that 5-year water and sewer rate study. So Eric will go over some of these projects that we have planned for next year for the Water and Sanitation Fund.
Thanks, Jake. And as Jake mentioned, the two primary projects that are driving the capital for this year are planned projects, as you mentioned. Well 10, so that is the full rehabilitation, so removal of the well and pump system, as well as the reconstruction of the well house and all the associated treatment equipment. So that one is going to bid shortly. So the numbers prior to the approval of the final budget in April will have updated numbers based on those bid results. Water main replacement, that's another area that's being scheduled. That is being designed, most of that work primarily in the Bright Oaks neighborhood up on the north end of town. And that number will be scaled depending on the results of both the bids for well 10 and the bids for that project itself. So the number plugged in there at 1.5 million is the amount assumed from the engineer's estimate for the full project, but we will again adjust and work to make that number appropriate to fit within our means that was planned within that 5-year rate study. So I just advise the board that don't be surprised if you see that number possibly decrease with the final budget number. And then the other major changes in there, some of them go up and down, but predominantly the last big project in there is the SCADA upgrade. So that's a new one for the lift station section of the business. The previous fiscal years had water system and water well SCADA improvements, and then the next phase is on the sanitation side and lift stations. And then the one new project with the construction of the regional lift station over by the Selkie property, the CVS lift station, as we commonly call it, we'll have the opportunity, once that new system is constructed, the first phase of development on the Selkie property gets in place, we'll have the opportunity to decommission that station and then send the little amount of flow that currently goes there by gravity over to the new lift station.
Very good. Any questions about those projects? Okay, now we're leaving that bucket of dollars and we're moving into a separate bucket of dollars. This is our capital projects fund. So projects that we have planned for next year, I would say, I think almost all of these were talked about during our CIP presentation. Building maintenance, banners, the RTA downtown plan, that's our share of it, Rotary Park maintenance and capital expenditures for the Rotary Park, roadway work, village hall, village website refresh, Starcom mobile radios, a scanning project that we're planning to do annually here as we look to move into our new building, trying to reduce the amount of documents that we have, engineering design services, tree placement, IT infrastructure, annual spend, police regional training facility, sidewalk gap program, which is a rare 100% grant, and then also our West Main Street sidewalk extension, which we've talked to the board previously about, which is a 100% grant as well. The flooding mitigation project that's over on Spring Street, some of that may come out of this current fiscal year. That's still in flux right now. And then also downtown infrastructure. This is for the sidewalk in front of Conscious Cup and preparing that infrastructure for future catenary lighting within the downtown, and then that Cary street art. So a portion of these are being funded within the budget through a transfer from the Land Conservancy Fund. Are there any questions about these projects from the village board? And certainly our budget, we're planning to approve it on April 7th, so there's time if you want to review this and follow up with questions.
Yeah, if we recall during the,
Hey, Jake.
Yes.
So we're just going to obviously be approving the budget, but if we don't agree with some of the projects, we would be voting on that separately, correct?
Well, I'd like to, for this, that's why we have this meeting, so we can talk about those projects. If there are projects that you're not excited about, so I can have a sense here when we put together the budget, if a majority of the board's not in support of certain projects, let's talk about it now, if we're ready.
So I was looking at the Cary streetscape sign.
okay.
And then we didn't really discuss it. We didn't have a discussion on it.
Are you talking about the downtown infrastructure, the $110,000?
No, the downtown street
The
art.
one below it.
The street art? Okay, yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that. There's no doubt.
I believe that we did have a discussion at the previous workshop with capital improvements, and there was, people were kind of excited about that. I guess now I'll kind of interject here too. I was contacted by the Community Foundation of McHenry County, and they believe that we are slotted for a donation of some type to offset some of these expenses. I don't know exactly what it is, but they notified me this week that we could expect a donation of some sort coming through their foundation.
That's exciting.
Is that donation earmarked for specifically infrastructure?
No, I will follow up. I indicated that we were going through our budget process right now, and we were having a budget workshop, and they were putting together, I think they have something that's what they have an idea for, but they haven't really said exactly what it is and what the total dollar amount will be. So I could, once we're through with this meeting, I could make sure that, let them know where we are in these things and ask them, where they see this is coming from.
Have they donated before?
I don't know.
What was the question?
They haven't told us.
If they
Yeah, I
donated
didn't know it was a
before.
Foundation, right?
Oh, it's a big
Oh,
one.
okay.
Yeah, so I thought, I've heard
There's
of
tons of them.
So here's my
There's not-
concerns. I love the project. I think the project would be great for the downtown area, but just, a few slides before, we're talking about the increase in revenue, the increase in expenditures, flat revenues, some of the challenges that we're up against and facing. And, water projects, I'm completely in favor of all that. That makes sense. But that is my only concern. It's just, are those necessary right now?
Mhm. Well, the water, that's a whole separate fund. This is coming from something else.
No, I know, but to me, I only mention water, because to me, water, that's a necessity. We have to take care of that. But right now, again, just looking at this, if we're talking about just some of the challenges we're facing with some of the projects, I just look at these projects as, again, I love them. I think they're fantastic. It's just, are they right now? That's my concern. That's just something I'm thinking about, just letting you know I'm not saying I'm against them or I'm not saying I'm for them, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, I understand, and, back if we go to our previous discussion regarding this, that we have to continue to show forward improvements in our downtown district, because that drives the rest of the community. And these are really minimal expenses to create some more excitement for downtown. I believe we just have one vacancy downtown, and we want to keep that momentum going, and to show that we're trying to create something that people will want to hang around and create that walking atmosphere that downtowns thrive on. We have our restaurants are full. People are excited about what's going on, and these are things that show that we're continuously going to improve. And this is a minimal expense, in my opinion, to kind of create that continue with that excitement moving on. But I understand where you're coming from. But
Thank you.
yeah, I completely understand that.
I have a-
That's why I was just asking about, that foundation, if you have a timeline on that. Just, again, to give us more information to make an educated decision on it.
I agree. I will make a phone call this next week.
All right, thank you.
I have a
Was there any-
question about Rotary Park capital expenditures. Can you explain it one more time, what it was and what that 100,000 is?
A lot of those costs will be moved towards things that are kind of in our basic plan. Again, the goal here is to, especially this is our first full year of operation, in line with that passive park approach, minimal maintenance moving forward. The main portions of those dollars are for some trail improvements by the parking lot in order to get that secondary access down to the water.
We also had monument signage is a
Right.
cost in there. The trail, as Eric had mentioned, there's another dock and kayak launch that we'd be looking at. Signage too, there's more signage that we need to do out on the property. And then a trail weed sprayer of $5,000. So that makes up the majority. And we're not looking to do anything too wild out there, or frivolous, I would say.
Yeah, remember, this is a passive park, and
Right.
we had planned the first couple of years to make some sizable improvements. I mean, when you're looking at the $100,000 expenditure right now, And then, once we get those amenities in that the residents will benefit from, then it just comes to maintenance, and that's substantially lower on an ongoing basis.
Right. As far as docks and stuff, I mean, in my opinion, I'd love to see that money go more towards the downtown project than that, maybe delay some of that and use that money for
Well, one of the
downtown
things,
infrastructure.
I understand, but in listening to some of the residents and that have notified us and actually had come into Village Hall with some concerns about that is where the kayak and canoe launching are, it's too far from the parking lot. And we knew that going into it, but we have to look at everything from an ADA compliance. And there's nowhere easy that's the best place to put it for a handicapped person to get there somewhat safely. So in order for us to bring the fishing pier, kayak launch, or whatever we're going to call it, closer to the parking lot, there has to be some construction of a path that kind of meanders down there, because the way the elevation is to get there, it's too steep.
Okay.
So some of the expense in that will be, which I believe we're going to do in-house. No?
Yes, part of the approach to streamline those costs is
Right.
twofold. I would ask our in-house public works staff to attempt to construct that.
Yeah.
And then also we're looking at some scales of economy savings by taking the earth, the spoils that otherwise would have been hauled off-site for the well tank construction. And we're putting it into our bid and option to have that earth moved from well 10 over to Rotary Park.
Perfect.
So we're going to save some money on.
So that's
save
why
money on
once the
supplies.
large expense at this time, because I don't think that we'll be doing any more major capital. When we first approved this going forward, I don't think that the board had any appetite for making any other capital improvements there. So, once we get through this big first expenditure, I think that the expenses are going to settle down dramatically, unless the board chooses to, do something else. But that was not the indication given from the board for all of our conversations. So,
And are we still had the Rotary that was contemplating helping do a shelter there, correct?
Right.
So we have some
I
other
believe
things
they're
going on
working
in
on
there.
that now. Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
And
Go ahead.
at our signage costs that we mentioned, obviously there's a lot of work already in place to get our summer operations with the assumption and the planning that we might try to get this park open through winter for the next season. There is the additional costs associated in that capital expenditure line to make that happen as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Because that's the board wants it open.
Right. Oh, yeah.
365 days, which is great.
Okay.
I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Kim had mentioned. And I think all of us are very cognizant of the fact that we have very limited resources to work with. However, I'm also trying to look at it long-term. And I think long-term, we have to spend a little money. We look at our own houses. We have to keep up with some of those things. We have to keep the curb appeal. We have to spend a little money that's going to come back full circle. We're going to have a big return on the investment, I think, when we do some investing of funds. And I'm looking at this, and it's not a lot. It is money, and I'm certainly not saying that 116,000, for example, isn't a lot of money, or 117,000. But I think it's money well spent, and I think that I'm just looking at the big picture. We have a new train station. You keep that hype going. So I understand. I'm hearing what it is. I wish we had more money, and we'll keep on looking at ways to do that. But I think that it's an effective way to spend money.
Are there any other comments?
I just want to add a comment
Sure.
that I'm also trying to look at big picture in that we have flat revenue and we have to make sure we're taking care of what we need to take care of. So I just add that in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions about projects that we're proposing within the capital projects fund?
Eric?
Okay, now we are leaving the capital projects fund bucket and we are moving into a separate bucket of dollars, which is the parking fund. Within the parking fund, next year, we've got some rather significant expenditures that are planned. Our share of the metro station project, there's still as the board is aware, I believe, the northwest pedestrian crossing that still needs to be completed. And then we have 4 projects here that will be funded from a transfer of the Land Conservancy dollars. There's a south commuter lot fence. There's a demolition of the depot site and the restoration. The project is linked then to a Union Pacific maintenance garage, so those have to happen together. And then the South Commuter Lot resurfacing project. So those are projects that we have funded within the parking fund. Obviously, these have an impact too. They are a part of our downtown. That Metro Depot station is right in the heart of downtown Cary. And I know the board has heard me say this before, but we need to continue to nurture the downtown. The downtown is our focal point. I've seen a lot of our neighbors start to spend big time dollars on their downtown. That doesn't mean we have to. For one, we don't have that ability, but we need to start taking a look at our downtown and the focal point of our community. So what questions do we have regarding the parking fund or projects within the parking fund for next year?
And remember too, also, when we first set out to do this, the train station, we did not anticipate an expenditure for the Northwest pedestrian improvement. That was kind of added in at the very last minute, actually during the course of construction, that the UP mandated that we do that. So that was it's a huge capital expense, and I get it. It's to provide safety for our commuters to go back and forth. But again, that was I thought it was almost $300,000 expenditure that was unforeseen at this time. So that set us back a little bit with regards to that. But now we're going to be starting to rebuild our parking lot fund. We have looked at the rates that we're going to be charging when we're going to implement those things. So we should see some of these things start to elevate. Forward thinking, we have to look at the north parking lot. That's not as bad as the south. The south is in dire need of replacing. We have a commitment to our commuters to make sure that they have a functional parking lot to pay to park in. So we want to make sure that we're living up to our end of the bargain. But that said, these are the largest capital improvements that we're going to have in the parking lot this year, and we don't have anything else that's really planned except for the North Fund.
Yep.
When we start building up that fund again, because we depleted it to do the improvements for Metro, which has been a great asset to our community.
Many are
So,
one-time.
One time. So, it's not all doom and gloom. These are things that, of course, when we don't have an expectation and they throw something at us at the last minute, we need to be able to deal with that. So I know the board is aware of that, but just for the public's concern, that's why we are looking at these things right now. So are there any other questions or comments about the parking lot fund? Okay.
Okay, very good. So I guess we'll land on this. This is the homework. This is your homework, Village Board. Study the summary of all funds. I'd be happy to go over this. I know there is a lot of information on here, but this is kind of the case on the page for our entire budget and where the dollars are being spent and where dollars are moving and ending fund balances. So I would just say in closing, the general fund budget, it's basically nuts and bolts. I mean, we're doing what we did this current fiscal year next year, and it's going to cost a little bit more. We have aggressive, what I'll say is aggressive capital expenditures. We have in one of the slides that I cut out, we have probably our biggest project in the history of the Village of Cary. New building, a $10, $11 million project. In addition, we have water and sewer infrastructure projects. We have downtown projects. We have parking fund projects. So it is going to be another busy year. We're optimistic it's going to be another successful year for the village. So I close with that. If there's any questions or final comments, I appreciate everyone being here on the call and in attendance. Thank you for your feedback.
Again, I'll jump on what Jake had said, but I strongly suggest if anybody's got any additional comments that they want to dive into and meet with Michael or Jake regarding any of these funds or the pending projects or future projects, please do that before our April 7th meeting. We are under a timeline to get these things done that has to be approved. We're hoping on that day. So there is a couple of weeks before this, so it's a great opportunity to sit down. If you want to talk to me about it or Jake, Michael or whatever, I'll be more than happy to make myself available to kind of go over these things. It's, there's not a lot. I mean, it's, we're doing the best that we can. I think when you look at holistically what our board is accomplishing is really remarkable. I think it's, we're making some huge improvements. We're doing some of these huge improvements without increasing our property taxes. That's something to be very proud of. But moving forward, we have to start looking seriously at other ways that we could bring in additional revenues. So,
Any final questions by the board? So just switching gears here quickly, just a quick update. Obviously, I know folks are, the whole community, the county, state are watching the coronavirus, COVID-19. I am talking on a daily basis with our department head leaders, the chief, and Eric especially. We are watching this and paying attention, and we're adjusting our operations as we see fit. In the police department specifically, in both police and public works, we've made some adjustments, but I just wanted the chief to go over a few of the adjustments that we've made within the police department, just so the board is aware, and we're happy to answer any questions anytime. So, Chief.
Yeah, I was just going to let everyone know that we've been diligently putting together a document that'll provide guidance to our employees and, a guide for our department heads in regards to actions to take in certain stages of this response currently in regards to infectious diseases, specifically COVID-19. We had, I have to thank Director Morimoto because we've been going back and forth on a document that we've been amending, and I believe the village administrator has probably one more round of review on it before we distribute it. But some of the things that we did do in regards to this document is we made some assumptions, and some of the assumptions were that, that there will be additional spread of this virus because there'll be additional testing. Currently, to my knowledge, I believe there's 2 cases in McHenry County that they've identified. I believe last I heard this morning was 40 cases statewide. But we'll no doubt see additional spread. We have Advocate Good Shepherd Hospital that will be treating some of these individuals. In fact, I believe the one McHenry County case did end up at Good Shepherd Hospital for treatment. And one of the other operational assumptions that we made is that we are not in a bubble. Everyone else is going to be in the same boat in terms of municipalities, and we can't necessarily believe or rely on other municipalities to be able to respond to our mutual aid requests because they'll be in the same situation that we are. So that being considered, we did put together 4 levels of response to this, and currently we're, I believe, in the action level 1 in terms of employee responses, facility responses, and community responses, and they're related to what the employees responsible for doing. Our facility response is related to housekeeping measures and supplies and things of that nature. And then finally, the community response related to communicating messages and things of that nature. Some of the things that are specific to the police department, though, are that we've identified some, in conjunction, by the way, with other police departments in CECOM. First off, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have 5 or 6 different rules for the different agencies. So because that's not, doesn't give good guidance to the telecommunicators in regards to the way they're processing calls for service. And right now, they're using a series of questions to determine if there's a likelihood of an infection for the fire departments, and if they have certain indicators that they'll advise the fire department so that they can take appropriate measures in regards to their response and entering a residence or things of that nature, and using additional personal protective equipment. And by the way, let me talk about personal protective equipment for a minute. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, ILEAS was distributing, or they were kind of eliminating a supply of N95 Respirators, it's a mask, right? So what we did is we took a large supply of those, so we tend to have a lot of those on hand. It wasn't because we saw this coming, it was because, you know, we saw an opportunity to include this in our supplies. So we have a great deal of supplies for our personnel in regards to Tyvek suits, we have respirators, we have housekeeping, cleaning supplies, we have gloves, and we have goggles or spit shields that we have available for our personnel. And late last night, Deputy Chief Winkleman was putting all those kits together, and there's a kit in every car, so that the officers have that as well. But some of the other things that we've talked about are the way that we respond to calls. There are calls that we just have to go to because that's the nature of the call. We're going to call those an in-person response, and officers will be required to respond to those things. And there'll be, you know, traffic crashes in the roadway that can't be moved, serious in progress crimes, things of that nature, alarms. And that'll be dictated by the nature of the call. The secondary response we have is if it's a call that's minor in nature or informational in nature, the officers can do it remotely. That is, just call the complainant, get the information, and avoid contact with the individual that way. Some of the other things that we've allowed to do is like ancillary services. So car seat installations, we do a lot of fingerprinting for the Security Exchange Commission, for nurses, things of that nature. We're suspending that for a while because it requires close personal contact. Enforcement actions, we still expect our police officers to do their job. So what we're, you know, we're allowing them to do it kind of from instead of taking a document from an individual, they can just ask for the information so they can verify their identity and, you know, take other steps in regards to distance that when they're having interactions. The McHenry County Jail, interestingly enough, has restricted some intake of their detainees. So we're going to be using notice to appears for some lower level violations instead of bringing them to the jail like we would normally do and then have a rights court or bond hearing. Records is, in fact, I went on Amazon last night and picked up an intercom so we can put it out there because they were having some concerns about having to kind of lean over and listen to people because we don't have a speaker through the window. So we'll install that for them. Assist to the fire department. If it's an infectious disease call, and it's not necessary for our officers to go inside. We're telling them not to go inside unless they're called. If they're called, then we have to assist them and use personal protective equipment. Otherwise, they can respond and they can provide security for the vehicles that the fire department responded with. I spoke to Chief Delatorre, and he was fine with our modification of our responses. And of course, our department personnel have a responsibility to use their personal protective equipment and practice good hygiene and things of that nature related to hand washing and covering their coughs. And we've done a lot of that educational distribution throughout the village. So with that, is there any questions in regards to this? I know that myself, the mayor, village administrator, we've been on at least 2 calls this week in regards to this matter. And what we're still hearing right now, at least what I'm hearing, is that right now the rate or the likelihood of infection or exposure in McHenry County is low, and that the individuals that are at most risk are older individuals or individuals with compromised immunity or things of that nature. So I believe that the Park District just modified their operations, and they've suspended operations at their senior center and their daycare. So I'm sorry,
Very
with
good.
that, now
Very
I'll
good.
take a question.
Be prepared. I mean, that's.
Right.
Yeah,
we're here.
keep on
Be prepared.
hammering, be prepared, let's not panic.
Right.
Be prepared.
Preparedness, not panic.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that, I've participated in many conference calls with the governor's office. The state has been really proactive regarding this, as well as I'm in constant contact with my fellow mayors here in McHenry County, kind of gauging where we're going. So we're prepared in the event that something happens where we need to declare an emergency. We are, all of the mayors in McHenry County are prepared to do that. We have a document already for that. So we're very proactive on this. We're watching this. Actually, the phone calls and the conference calls that we've had with the governor have been very productive. They've been very transparent in what to do, but we're just trying to be as proactive as possible. It's not a huge issue for us right now, but we have to be ready for it and just enforce the fact that people need to remain calm and not panicked. And that's how we're going to handle it. We're doing the internal things that we need to. Staff has been doing a great job working together. They've been working on these for the last few weeks when we saw this coming down. And it's great to see them working together with the other communities and sharing documents, sharing different things so we can all work on these together and be united. So we will prevail over this. I don't think it's going to be here a long time, but we're ready. The board needs to be aware that we are ready. And if you have any other questions regarding this and our preparedness, please contact Jake, the chief, or myself, and we'll be more than happy to go over these things with you. Other than that, are there any other questions?
I do have one more question, and it's important for you to know this information because your constituents are going to be asking you questions about it and things of that nature. However, I have a question that I'll be asking our legal counsel in regards to solicitors, because we have a number of solicitors that came in for solicitors' permits, and there's really no mechanism for me to restrict them from requesting and going out. As you remember, when we had this discussion as it relates to solicitors, that whole concept is based on the resident, and it's the resident's prerogative to either answer the door or not answer the door, or post a notice to say no solicitors. So in case you hear that there's solicitors going, door to door, things of that nature, we'll vet them because that's what we're supposed to do. There's criteria that would allow me to not issue that permit, but there's no mechanism right now to say I can't, or I can restrict issuing those right now with some type of legal mechanism.
Yeah. We will be talking with the village attorney about that, as the chief said, to understand what our options are, so.
Okay, with nothing else being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no opposed. Thank you. Have a good rest of the weekend. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
That's good.
Yeah.